Hey guys, this is Vic from Plate.to.paper. In today's tutorial, we'll be painting pudding with cherries. This exercise and the materials I'll be referencing come from the first edition Watercolour Art Kit that I released with Mossery, and the link is in the description if you want to check it out. So let's start with the colour mixes. Here's the first option for the base pudding colour. I'm using yellow ochre with a touch of lemon yellow, and heavily diluting it for the first wash. For subsequent washes, simply increase the concentration. Option 2 for the base colours, I'll use permanent yellow and lemon yellow. Dilute this for the first wash. I'll add yellow ochre and permanent yellow for shading. For the cherries, vermilion red and opera pink. For shading, I'm adding ultramarine, more opera pink, and a bit of vermilion to the mix. For the mint leaves, permanent yellow and viridian green. Going darker, I'm adding more viridian and a bit of burnt sienna. Next, we'll need a range of greys. I mixed Chinese white and neutral tint for a cool grey. Then I add a little burnt sienna to warm it up. For a darker grey, add neutral tint or burnt sienna to adjust. For a light warm grey, add just a bit of yellow ochre to white. Finally, we have the caramel colours. An orange mix using permanent yellow and opera pink. Next, burnt sienna with a touch of vermilion. For the darkest brown, burnt sienna and ultramarine. Lastly, a darker orange with more opera pink and a bit of permanent yellow. We have our base palette, so let's start painting. First, we'll protect our highlights and bold details using some masking fluid. I dispense some masking fluid onto some paper and apply it to the highlight areas using a skewer. It will need about 15 minutes to dry and shouldn't feel sticky or tacky when touched. While the masking fluid dries, I apply my first colours to the cream using the lightest warm grey. Then I brush a wash of clean water to the main body of the pudding, followed by the first yellow or cream base. We'll wait for the masking fluid to dry. Now we can apply a first wash of orange to the caramel parts. Followed by our red-brown mix. We'll continue building layers of colour of darker brown later. Starting with the cherries with our red-pink mix. I like to use a wetter wash for rounder objects so that my darker colours here will blend in smoothly. I'll continue with the rest of the cherries, but working on alternate ones so that the washes don't bleed into each other. For the metal bowl, I'm using a lighter warm grey for the base layer. Since the wash isn't too wet, I continue adding some darker values with warm and cool greys. It's always useful to have a good reference photo when painting these details. Now I'm building up the colours in the main pudding body. It's important to let bigger areas like these dry more before adding additional washes. I'm also deepening the browns and oranges in the caramel layer as we go along. Next, I apply the green mix to the mint leaves and the cherry stem. To shade the stem, use a drier brush and shape the tip into a thin line. Use the darker green to add details to the leaves. When the masking fluid and the paint layers are dry enough not to smudge, we can rub off some of the dried masking fluid. Here, I'm adding more of the darkest brown and using it to refine the shape and size of the highlights. I'll do the same as I deepen the colours of the cherries. When masking for highlights, I find masking fluid to be a good starting point, but it usually needs some work to get it to where I want it to be. Now I'm adding some burnt sienna mixed with some pink to the bottom where the caramel has pooled. Using a mid-range grey, I'm going over the spotted details of the bowl. And using a drier brush, carefully adding some definition to the bowl shape. Now with my pink watercolour pencil, I'm adding in some light pencil lines. This will give me some gentle definition to the piece. Going back to the bowl with some warmer greys. When painting metal, I like to use a mix of warm and cooler greys in the reflections. I'm also adding a little to the whipped cream. Adding another wash of darker yellow to the pudding. Then I even out the orange layer and add some small hole details with brown. Back to the cherries, giving just a bit more definition and colour. Now I can remove the dried masking fluid from the bowl details. Then using darker grey, I give the details some dimension. I go on to do more outlines and detailing on the bowl shape, and some darker grey to bring out the rim and the outlines. Here I'm applying some darker green to the leaves. Back to the cream, I'm adding some darker warm grey to further define the shape. When painting cream, I try to use a combination of warm cream and cooler grey colours to give it dimension and volume. Now I'm just applying some finishing touches. For the last step, I use a thick white to add some tiny highlights where needed. And we're done. Our pudding with cherries is complete. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!